Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And patch 11.1 is a big undertaking from Blizzard. They are doing a tremendous amount of changes and improvements to desperately get people back into Mythic Plus and raiding. And throughout those weekly tests, they have been doing class changes, tuning adjustments, and just gameplay improvements. So in today's video, we're going to be covering this week's round of updates. And it seems like at this point that they might be happening more frequently now than just once a week, even possibly, as we're likely getting very close to an announcement date for patch 11.1. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. So the first round of changes are targeting the drive system, which is going to be a new way that you are moving around in the game in the new zone for patch 11.1. They fixed an issue that would result in you getting stuck in place when traveling at high speeds and colliding with certain surfaces. That sounds like a good improvement. Fixed a set of issues affecting players after dismounting, including a bug that causes the player to unintentionally spin around and a bug that could cause players to turn slower than usual. Those sound like very fun goblin-esque bugs to have happen to you when you're riding around at the speed of sound. Resolved several other animation and sound issues. Fixed a bug that prevented turbo from being earned under some intended conditions. And reset race should now also reset your speed. Added a bounce effect to the G99 breakneck. When it hits walls, the harder you hit, the farther you bounce. They're really trying to make this new kind of ground dragon riding as fun as possible, but obviously the meat and potatoes of this update is going to be for the classes. On Holy DKs last week, you got a lot of buffs. This week, it does not look like all buffs. Death Coil is getting a 13% nerf. Magus of the Dead is getting a 35% damage buff. However, they will be lasting less duration. So they're going to be a bit burstier, it looks like, just getting their damage out in a smaller amount of time. Maybe that's going to be better for all content in the game. You know, for Mythic Plus, if the trash is dying too fast, then if they last 8 seconds, they don't get to hit anything. And then PvP, obviously, burst is more preferred, although Death Coil is a pretty significant portion of your burst in PvP, so that's probably going to be felt pretty badly by the 13% Death Coil nerf. Commander of the Dead now increases the damage of Gargoyle and Army of the Dead by 45%, so we're seeing a 10% from what it was previously. And Gargoyle is just getting a baseline 15% damage increase, so they're looking to try and maybe expand your build into more gargoyle-oriented talents. Definitely keep an eye on that if you're an Unholy Death Knight. Your Riders of the Apocalypse tree is also just getting a buff. It looks like all the Horsemen are going to be doing 10% more damage. All the Horsemen and all the Men, or whatever that, couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Does not include, though, Undeath and Trollbane's Ice Fury. And I think Ice Fury was a very big kind of like bursty portion of this, so it's more or less just very passive portions of their damage. Probably not going to be felt too hugely. For Demon Hunter, activating Vengeful Retreat now enforces a brief cooldown for Fellblade, similar to its behavior with Fell Rush. Activating Fellblade shortly after activating Vengeful Retreat will now cause Vengeful Retreat's movement if Fellblade's target is too close to dash to it. And I think it's because they're trying to impose a new mechanic with momentum. So instead of using Fell Rush, you're going to use, instead of using Fell Rush, you're going to use Fellblade. So they're trying to make it interact the same way, and maybe so it's less jarring visually, but I can't feel like this would end up being a bad change. Fellscarred, Student of Suffering bonus mastery value has been reduced by 33%, and duration has been reduced to 6 seconds, down from 8. That sounds like a nerf overall to this, although I'm a bit, unfamiliar with this portion of Fellscarred. I think the main portion of it is just the big fell eruptions you get to do damage, but the mastery bonus could likely have some significance to your burst. Cycle of Hatred is now a 1-point talent, down from 2. Fellscarred, Demon Surge now causes Metamorphosis to increase fury generated by demon blades by only 3, down from 5. So you're going to have less fury generation, and it looks like you're going to be getting your mastery scaled down a bit. So these seem like nerfs to me. For Vengeance, Fallout's chance to generate soul fragments has been increased at a lower target count, with 1 guaranteed soul fragment generated when striking a single target. Maximum possible remains 5, so just making you better at single target. Feed the Demon is now 1 point, down from 2. Feed the Demon now reduces the cooldown of Demon Spikes by 0.35 seconds per soul fragment consumed, up from 0.25 to 0.5, because it's a 1-point talent, so you're going somewhere in between. So a little bit less cooldown reduction frequency between this. Demon Surge is going to be doing 20% less damage, although this is outlined for Vengeance. So I think that they have separated this from Havoc. You're not going to see that nerf for Havoc. Burning Blades now deals 40% of its listed ability damage over 6 seconds. It was 50% previously, so these just seem like Demon Hunter nerfs. Fixed an issue where Fell Devastation did not share a cooldown with Fell Desolation. These just all seem like nerfs. Vengeance must be overperforming for them to be doing this. Flame Shaper, which is getting a ton of attention for evokers and probably a hero talent tree that's definitely worth exploring on the patch day. Consume Flame will now properly have its radius increased when striking larger enemies. Consume Flame's damage has been increased to 900% of 1 tick of fire breath, up from 750%. And they fixed an issue where Engulf's damage was being increased by damage over time effects from other evokers. Okay, so that seems like a nerf. If you were stacking them and you were cheesing some mechanic like that, but that's definitely something that you're going to be happy about getting caught now, as opposed to getting, gearing up an evoker and they find that later and you get a huge nerf, because that would be a massive cheese strat. Augmentation upheavals from the Liberation of Undermine's 2-set bonus no longer increase the duration of Ebb and Might. That's a nerf. For Devastation, Fire Breath damage over time effects getting a 15% damage buff, and remember this, the Consume Flame synergy there. And Eternity Surge is getting a 20% damage buff. Scintillation triggers Eternity Surge at 50% power, though, down from 50. So the random proc Eternity Surge, overall it's still stronger, I would assume, or it's about the same. It's either the same or just or a bit stronger, I think. They're buffing Black Arrow again. Dark Ranger Beastmaster Hunter's getting 10% more damage on Black Arrow. Pack Leader's already catching some nerfs. Pack Leader bear damage reduced by 20%. Pack Leader's one of the hero talent trees that getting big rework. Definitely a hero talent tree that if you're a Hunter player, you're going to want to explore into, but you're unfortunately seeing some nerfs. Marksmanship Hunter, which is getting a massive rework as well. True Shot now increases your critical strike damage by 20%, up from 10. They're going to be one-shotting people. Oh, my God. Survival Hunter. This might be the Survival Hunter apocalypse patch where, like, Ret Paladins were taking over in Dragonflight, because Mongoose Bite damage is getting a 30% buff, Raptor Strike 10% buff, Wildfire Bomb 10% buff. However, and you're getting a buff on your Pack Leader. Your Wyvern is going to increase your damage by 15% up from 10. I think he was already the best animal to get. So Survival is gunning to possibly be the next kind of like, Red Apocalypse, I think. Even Arcane Mage, every patch update I've read so far, it says Arcane Barrage buff. Now it's getting a 20% damage buff. Intuition damage bonus increased to 50% up from 20, and its duration has been reduced to 3, down from 6. So you have a little bit less time to get rid of this, but you get a massive bonus on it. Fire Mage Unleashed Inferno damage bonus increased to 70% up from 60. Sun King's Blessing damage bonus reduced to 260 from 280, but Hyperthermia's chance to trigger has been increased. And Fire's been getting a lot of touch-ups as well as Frost. It seems like they're trying to equal their power out at least a bit moving into this patch. Curious to see if this can actually hit that or not. For Frost, Wintertide has been updated, now grants 2 to 4% increased Icicle and Glacial Spike damage, stacking up to 2 times, so it can go up to 8. Glacial Spike will no longer consume Wintertide. Developers notes, Wintertide was proving to have more substantial rotational impact than intended. And for Spell Slinger, Splintering Orb's Frost Splinter generation reduced to 4 from 5, and Spell Frost's Teaching chance to trigger reduced to 2 from 2.5. And you already weren't really running Spell Slinger, at least in PvP on Frost. So you kind of feels bad when you see a hero talent tree like that if there aren't any kind of like PvP reversions. Ret Paladin Crusade will now consistently display the correct spell visual when Glyph of Winged Vengeance is being used. This is a visual update. For Shadow Priest. I haven't seen Shadow Priest on a single 11.1 patch note, I feel like, the entire time. Casting Power Infusion now adds the duration of your current Power Infusion when using the Liberation of Undermine 4 set up to a maximum duration of 30 seconds. So I only can assume that your 4-piece gives you Power Infusion. So now instead of it either replacing it, it's just going to get added into it and you'll get a longer lasting Power Infusion. For Rogue, also not a lot of Rogue stuff, Deathstalker fixed several issues with Singular Focus that prevented its application from being reliable. I want to say reapply, but this is reliable. So not just bug fixes, nothing too huge. For Shaman Enhancement, your 4-set bonus, each stack of Electrostatic Wager will now increase the damage of Crash Lightning by only 18%, down from 24. And your 4-set bonus, Electrostatic Wager, will now only increase the initial damage of Crash Lightning. We have found that the interaction between Electrostatic Wager and the cleave damage of Crash Lightning has created a more complex decision-making process than we intended for the set bonus. So I don't want it to completely change your rotation. So it's just going to be a minor improvement to Crash Lightning. Stormbringer, Awakening Storms will grant Tempest every 4 times it occurs. That's a big nerf, I feel like. Maybe you're just getting it so frequently. A lot of people were playing Enhancement Stormbringer. I was kind of anticipating it was going to carry forward, but That means you're going to have to wait a little bit longer in order to get Tempest, which is that big payout moment. Voltaic Surge now increases the damage of Crash Lightning and Chain Lightning by only 10%, down from 15. So some Stormbringer nerfs, just nerfs in general, honestly, to enhance. Destruction Warlock fixed an issue where the Liberation of Undermined 4-set bonus was providing higher mastery than intended. That's a nerf. The Liberation of Undermined 4-set bonus now grants 2% mastery when a jackpot happens, down from 3%. So nerfs to Destro. For Arms Warrior, fix some issues that could cause the new Colossus Smash and Warbreaker Vigils to not display correctly, so just visual changes. And this giant TLDR for Prot Warrior is that they think it's too complex, so they're going to be simplifying it by not giving you as many Shield Slam resets and giving you rage generation through other means. So chance to reset the cooldown on Shield Slam from Devastator and Strategist has been reduced to 25. From 20, and Ignore Pain's icon now displays the remaining absorb amount as a percentage of the maximum absorb amount. Punish reduces the damage the punish target does to you by 3%, down from 4. So just trying to make it a bit more noob friendly, but not totally removing the higher skill level play is their intent with this. For delves, they're lowering the difficulty of higher tier delves. Tier 9, 10, and 11 are going to be lowered. Bran as a tank will now receive 50% reduced healing while unconscious. So just making delves even easier than they were before. I already thought that everybody was doing delves, but I guess delves are going to be even easier. Maybe the new delves were actually kind of hard. I didn't try any of them, but it seems like they're going to be very easy now to do. For raid items, Torque's Big Red Button returned as a 2-minute effect, down from 3, and Florendo's Pilot Light returned as a 2-minute effect, down from 3. Operation Floodgate, weapon and armor secondary stats have been adjusted. And for PvP, they really don't like Flame Shaper. They're doing more preemptive nerfs to it. Consume Flame is now reduced by 60% in PvP, up from 40. It's probably because of the buff that they did above. They're just scaling these together. Engulf is now reduced by 70% in PvP, up from 60. And Eternity Surge will not be getting that 20% damage bonus increase, which means you're honestly just getting a nerf, because the proc Eternity Surge on that change is getting reduced by 10%. If you don't have this to compensate, then you are getting just nerfed in that sense. But I guess your Fire Breath damage over time effect will be higher, so less bursty but more sustained, and honestly that's probably a healthier direction to take Devastation Evoker. Bit surprised to only see this many PvP changes. I feel like we haven't really seen a lot since their kind of initial talent iteration. It feels like their focus is almost entirely on Mythic Plus and Radiant and trying to get those things going. So maybe that means that the PvP updates will happen just a little bit later. Because I feel like we're gonna need more. This seems really chaotic as far as like the volume of changes that is going, because I mean, just look at the amount of changes that I've covered so far through the entire period. This is all of them stacked on top of each other that we have gone through and looked at. Like that took me and I'm scrolling fast, and that took me a long time, man. Like I don't even think ChatGPT could handle typing and summarizing the volume of changes that we have reviewed so far up to this point. And it just seems like it's going to be like darts on a board. I am going to do my best at some point to try and discern which of these are the most significant changes once we get an announcement date, to look at like what could actually be the top performing specs for the next patch. So again, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can see that type of content, because that's going to be quite the ordeal to actually be able to manage to pull all of that information together for you guys in order to actually give you a as close to accurate prediction as possible. And I usually do the prediction tier list, then we'll review how close I was to always hold myself accountable in that sense, to make sure that my tracking to see what type of mechanics is actually on point. And I'd say that it usually is. I think there might have been one patch where I was off a bit, but usually my predictions have been pretty on point for this type of stuff. So thank you guys for watching once again and supporting the channel. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.